draft their animals and their food and put them in the right place in your conservation area in Spectacular.
And today we'll be teaching you how to play Spectacular, game designed by Elif Svensson and Osmond Svensson and published by Chilifox Games.
And hello everyone, it's Stella.
And Taryn from Meeple University.
Alright, let's get to the classroom.
Spectacular is a tile drafting and placement game in which players will work as conservationists, attempting to breed and care for vulnerable animals. Round by round, players will draft tiles representing the animals they'll keep, and dice representing food and care, placing them strategically to produce habitats and build watchtowers. Through a mix of personal and shared draft pools, players will build up their parks, and whoever can score the most points from breeding and feeding their animals, keeping diverse animals and scoring objectives will be the winner. To set up, give each player a player board. You can use the symmetrical sides showing the sun or the asymmetrical sides showing the leaf. Give each player the 15 matching pink-backed tiles. This will be 10 hexes called personal animal tiles, shuffled into a face-down stack, and 5 oval worker tokens which are kept face up. From your personal animal stack, draw 3 tiles into these slots along the left edge of your board, and then, one at a time in order, deal tiles from the top of your deck to fill the 3 starting spaces on your map. If the tile is a watchtower tile, which shows one of these coloured wedges, then orient it as shown on the board, while if it's a breeding tile, which is indicated by this heart, then the orientation does not matter. Once all of your starting tiles are placed, take 2 dice of each colour, roll them, and place them into these slots. Give each player a supply board and then set up the common resources. This will include a pool of coloured dice, for which each player takes 1 per colour, rolls them and places them onto these spaces of their supply board. These spaces are never filled during setup, they come into play midway through the game if you're playing a 2 to 4 playered game. Then make shuffled face-down stacks of the 4 different colours of common animals, removing and returning to the box any which show this X if you're playing a 2 to 4 playered game, and deal 1 tile of each colour face up to each player's supply board. Keep the remaining common tiles and dice nearby ready for the mid-game reset. If you're playing with missions, randomly deal each player a tile from each of the A, B and C decks. Keep a general supply of watchtowers nearby for common use. Now it's time for final preparations, and this is the last step before you begin the game. During the game, you'll be drafting tiles and dice from the supply boards which will be rotating around between the players, as well as from your own personal draft pool which only you will draft from, and from which you will draft every tile and die present across the course of the game. This final preparation step is your last opportunity to manipulate your personal pool before it's locked in. To this end, there are 2 things you can do. Firstly, you may swap one of your placed starting tiles with one of the tiles in the left-hand side slots. And in particular, it's recommended you may want to do this if you have matching watchtower colours starting in your map. Secondly, you may choose any number of the dice from your pool and re-roll them once before returning them to your display. As we'll learn, you do need a good mix of dice ranging from low to high, so this is your chance to give you that distribution. Once everyone is done, you're now ready to play. Spectacular is played in 2 rounds, and each round is played in a series of turns in which players will draft and place tiles and dice. There will be intermediate scoring at the end of the first round, and endgame scoring at the end of the second. At the start of turn, each player simultaneously drafts 2 items. The first will be either a die or a tile from the supply board, which is placed onto the north space of your map. The second will be a die or a face-up tile from your personal supply. Do note, if you end up in a dispute because different players want to see what their opponents draft before making their choices, then selection should be made in supply board number order from lowest to highest. Once everyone's selected their 2 items, build them in either order into your maps. A tile may be built into any empty space and in any orientation without restriction. And do note that your starting printed tile is not considered empty. If making this placement completes the 3 wedges of a watchtower, place a matching watchtower token immediately onto those hexes. To build a die, place it onto a matching coloured empty tile, which can legally take that number. A breeding tile can only take a die with a number 1 or 2. A watchtower tile, regardless of whether or not the watchtower has been built, can take any number between 1 and 5. Your starting pre-printed star tile can only hold a number 6, and the only other type of tile which can hold a 6 is a watchtower tile where the watchtower has already been built. That means that this placement is illegal, but this placement is legal. When placing a die, you may flip over your worker token of the matching colour to change the pip value on that die by 1. This may be required to make a placement legal. Doing this does allow you to change a 1 into a 6 and vice versa, but use your tokens wisely as each is a once per game effect. Finally, if you cannot or do not wish to build the item that you drafted, you can always discard it and return it to the box. Once everyone has finished placing or discarding what they've drafted, you'll move to the next turn. If there's an empty space in your personal tile display, and you still have any tiles in your deck, draw the next one into the empty slot, and hand your supply board to the player on your left. After the 8th turn, the supply boards will be empty, and this signifies the end of the first round. At this point, you may, if you wish, spend 1 or more workers to adjust the values of dice already in your map, as long as it's still a legal placement when you're done. Now conduct intermediate scoring. Add up the pip value on all dice in your map, which can be traced back to the entrance through a path of other dice. On this map, these 5 dice will score a total of 24 points. These 3 dice will not. Mark these scores on the score sheet. Now refill the supply boards with 1 tile of each colour and a number of new dice which you'll roll and place. This will be 1 die per colour in the 5 or 6 player game, or 2 dice per colour in the 2 to 4 player game. The second round ends after 7 turns, at which point your personal display will be empty, but the supply board will not. Once again, you have the opportunity to spend workers to adjust dice, and then proceed to final scoring. You do not re-evaluate the entrance objective. That was for intermediate scoring only. For endgame scoring, first evaluate each of your terrain groups. That is, any adjacent collection of tiles of the same colour. For each group, score points equal to the sum of pips of dice on those tiles, multiplied by the number of breeding tiles in that group with a die on them. So this green terrain has 16 pips and 1 breeding tile, a total of 16 points. This grey terrain has 19 pips and 1 breeding tile for 19 points. This yellow section has 10 pips and 2 breeding tiles, so 10 times 2 is 20. While the breeding tile in my water terrain is not occupied, so I do not score any points here. Next, score watchtowers. Any placed watchtower which has 3 dice adjacent to it scores points equal to the pips on those dice. So this watchtower scores 14, this one scores 17. This one does not have 3 dice surrounding it. It scores nothing. Next, count up your total number of different animals in your park and score points according to this table. You're looking for the different animal pictures on each of these tiles. And so here I have 13 different animals, a total of 30 points. Do be aware that in each colour there are 4 different animals available in the common animals. And while one will be much scarcer than the others, all players will have access to at least one of those animals in their personal piles. Each player will have a couple of these animals which only they have extra access to, and to get to 17 animals would also count their star animal, to which they have automatic access from the start of the game. The distribution of tiles is such that to get the full 80 points, you will at one point during the game need to discard one of the personal tiles you drafted. You won't have room for your 17th animal on your 20 hex grid. Finally, if you're playing with missions, score the points for any of your mission tiles which you've achieved. The player with the highest score wins. If tied, whoever has the highest total pip value of dice on breeding tiles breaks the tie, and if still tied, victory is shared. And that's how to play Spectacular.
Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, let me know and share this video if you enjoyed it. And hopefully you have a wonderful day. See you next time.